The hunters become the hunted, the crimson glow of Proxima. Centauri painted the void in shades of blood as War Prime Vector stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Bone Crusher. His 4 yellow eyes scanned the tactical display with predatory satisfaction. 50 Scarix warships stretched across the asteroid field in perfect hunting formation, their dark holes bristling with plasma cannons and kinetic accelerators. For 3 decades, Vector had led the Crimson Tide fleet, and in all that time, no prey had escaped his grasp. The Scarix were born hunters. Their homeworld of Scaroth was a death trap of poisonous swamps and carnivorous plants, where only the strongest and most cunning survived. Those traits had served them well when they reached the stars. Now, the Scarix Empire controlled 17 star systems, each one conquered through superior tactics and ruthless efficiency. Today's hunt had begun when their long-range sensors detected an unknown vessel drifting near the outer edge of human territory. Intelligence reports suggested that humans were a young species, barely a century into space travel, with primitive technology and weak military forces. Perfect prey for the Crimson Tide. War Prime called Sub-Commander Zephyr from her station, her scaled hands dancing over the control interface. Target vessel is now in visual range, sending data to your display. Vector's mandibles clicked with amusement as the image appeared. The human ship was exactly what he had expected, a bulky, inelegant cargo hauler with external fuel tanks and communication arrays jutting from its hull like tumors. Its designation, painted in crude human script, read Merchant's Dream. The vessel appeared to be running on minimal power, its engines cold, drifting helplessly through the asteroid field. Pathetic, Vector growled, his voice carrying the authority of countless victories. Their ship design lacks any aesthetic beauty or tactical consideration. Look at those exposed fuel lines and unarmored sensor arrays. A single plasma burst would cripple it. The bridge crew chittered their agreement. Navigation Officer Crix, his cybernetic eye worry as it focused on the display, spoke up. War Prime, the vessel appears to be damaged. I'm detecting atmosphere leaks and intermittent power fluctuations. They may be in distress. Even better, Vector replied, his tail lashing with anticipation. Desperate prey makes mistakes. Signal the fleet's standard encirclement pattern. I want that ship surrounded from every angle before they even know we're here. The Crimson Tide moved like a pack of spaceborne predators, their ships sliding through the asteroid field with practiced ease. Each captain knew their role in the hunt. Heavy cruisers took the outer positions, ready to prevent any escape attempts. Destroyers moved to flank positions, their weapons primed for quick strikes. Fighter squadrons launched from carrier bays, spreading out like a swarm of deadly insects. As they closed in, the human vessel seemed oblivious to their approach. It continued its lazy drift, showing no signs of defensive preparations. No shields powered up, no weapons emerged from hidden ports, no distress signals were transmitted. It was as if the humans aboard were completely unaware of the death closing in around them. Scan complete, War Prime, reported Science Officer Thane, his 3-fingered hands adjusting the sensor array. The vessel contains standard human cargo, processed foods, manufactured goods, entertainment, media. Crew complement appears to be approximately 50 individuals. Life support is functioning but strained. They're definitely in trouble. Vector allowed himself a moment of disappointment. He had hoped for more of a challenge, perhaps a military escort, or at least some attempt at resistance. Still, intelligence gathered from captured human vessels would be valuable for future operations. the Scarix Empire was always hungry for new territories, and these humans seemed to occupy several resource-rich systems. "Hail them," Vector commanded. "Let's see if these primitives have learned proper protocol for surrendering to their betters." The communication array crackled to life, broadcasting on standard galactic frequencies. Zephyr's voice took on the formal tone required for surrender demands. "Human vessel, this is the Scarix Imperial Fleet. You are surrounded and outgunned. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in your immediate destruction." For several minutes, there was no response. The human ship continued its listless drift, showing no signs of acknowledgement. Some of the younger officers on the bridge began to mutter among themselves, suggesting that perhaps the ship's communication system was damaged along with everything else. Then, suddenly, a voice came through the speakers. It was calm, measured, with a strange accent that none of the universal translators could quite place. "Scarix vessels, this is Captain Chen of the UES Retribution. You seem to have made a small error in identification." Confusion rippled through the bridge crew. Vector's eyes narrowed as he stared at the tactical display. The ship still showed up as the Merchant's Dream, still appeared to be the same damaged cargo hauler they had been tracking. Yet the voice claimed to be from something called the UES Retribution. "Human," Vector snarled into the communicator, "you will cease this deception immediately. Our sensors clearly show a damaged civilian vessel. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick." A sound came through the speakers that it took Vector a moment to recognize laughter. Soft, genuinely amused laughter that sent an inexplicable chill down his spine. "Oh, I'm not deceiving anyone," the human voice replied. "Your sensors are working perfectly. They're showing you exactly what I want them to show you. But since you insist on seeing the truth..." The voice paused, and Vector could hear the soft sound of fingers tapping on a control surface. "Computer, disengage holographic camouflage." What happened next would haunt Vector's nightmares for the rest of his life. The space around the Merchant's Dream began to shimmer like heat waves rising from sun-baked stone. The bulky cargo hauler seemed to melt and flow, its crude hull plating dissolving to reveal something underneath that defied every assumption the Scarix had made about human technology. The UES Retribution was a thing of terrible beauty. Its hull was a seamless blend of metallic silver and deep blue, flowing in organic curves that somehow suggested both speed and devastating firepower. It was massive, easily 3 times the size of Vector's flagship, yet it moved through space with the grace of a hunting predator. Weapon ports that hadn't existed moments before now glowed with contained energy. Sensor arrays that appeared more advanced than anything in the Scarix arsenal swept the surrounding area with obvious intensity, but it was the engines that truly struck terror into Vector's heart. Instead of the crude chemical or fusion drives he expected from humans, the Retribution's propulsion system pulsed with rings of blue-white energy that bent space around them. This was technology that the Scarix Empire could only dream of possessing. "By the burning moons of Scaroth," whispered Navigation Officer Crix, his cybernetic eye clicking frantically as it tried to process what it was seeing. "War Prime, that ship... It's not in our databases, not in anyone's databases." The bridge fell silent except for the soft beeping of instruments and the labored breathing of increasingly terrified crew members. Vector's confident demeanor began to crack as the implications of what he was seeing settled in. This was no primitive cargo hauler. This was a warship that represented technology decades, perhaps centuries ahead of what the Scarix possessed. "Captain, Chun's voice returned, still carrying that note of quiet amusement. Now that we have your attention, let me explain your situation. You are currently surrounded by what you believe to be a superior force. You have 50 ships, impressive weapons, and the confidence that comes from a long string of easy victories. I have 1 ship, a crew of 200, and the advantage of actually knowing what I'm doing. Vector found his voice, though it came out as more of a growl. Impossible. 1 ship cannot stand against the Crimson Tide. We have conquered 17 star systems. We have never been defeated. Yes, I know, Chen replied. We've been watching your empire's expansion for quite some time. Very impressive, really. Your tactics work well against species with technology similar to your own. Unfortunately for you, we are not one of those species. Without warning, the retribution moved, not the gradual acceleration that Scarrick's ships required, but an instantaneous translation from stationary to full combat velocity. One moment it was, floating peacefully among the asteroids. The next it was weaving through the Crimson Tide formation like a needle through cloth. Vector shouted orders. His calm demeanor finally shattered. All ships, open fire. Bring down that ship. The response was immediate and overwhelming. 50 Scarrick's warships unleashed everything in their arsenals. Plasma bolts, kinetic slugs, missile swarms, and energy beams converged on the human vessel from every direction. The amount of destructive force being unleashed could have cracked a small moon. The retribution danced through it all untouched. Its movement defied physics as the Scarricks understood it. The ship twisted and turned in patterns that should have torn any vessel apart, yet its hull showed no stress fractures. Weapons fire that should have been impossible to avoid somehow missed by margins so small they seemed calculated rather than lucky. And through it all, the human ship hadn't fired a single shot in return. War Prime Sub-Commander Zephyr called out, her voice tight with barely controlled panic. Their defensive capabilities are beyond our calculations. Recommend immediate withdrawal. To her words were cut off as the retribution finally returned. Fire. But instead of the devastating barrage that Vector expected, the human ship released only a single, precisely aimed pulse of blue energy. The beam struck the Scarrick's destroyer Bloodfang, and in less than 2 seconds, the entire ship simply ... stopped. Its engines went dark, its weapons powered down, its lights flickered and died. The vessel went completely dead in space, its crew, presumably unconscious but alive. Then the retribution did something even more terrifying. It stopped moving and hung motionless in the center of the Scarrick's formation, as if daring them to continue the attack. Captain Chen's voice returned to the communication channel, but now it carried a note of cold authority that made blood freeze in his veins. That was a demonstration. Your ship is intact and your crew is unharmed, but they won't wake up for several hours. I could have just as easily reduced your vessel to its component atoms. The choice of what happens next is entirely yours. Vector stared at the tactical display in growing horror. Half of his fleet was reporting system malfunctions, damaged weapons, or complete power failures, and they had been inflicted by a single human ship that hadn't even seemed to be trying very hard. For the first time in his 3 decades of conquest, War Prime Vector of the Crimson Tide faced the possibility that he had encountered prey that was actually a predator. Asterisk, when predators meet apex. Predator's captain, Sarah Chen, stood calmly on the bridge of the UES Retribution, her hands clasped behind her back as she watched the tactical display. 20 years of military service had taught her to read the psychology of an enemy, and right now the Scarix fleet was broadcasting fear, confusion, and growing desperation on every sensor channel. She was a small woman by human standards, barely reaching 5.5 feet in height, with graying hair pulled back in a regulation bun and eyes that held the quiet confidence of someone who had seen the worst the universe had to offer and emerged victorious. The crew around her moved with practiced efficiency, monitoring dozens of alien ships while maintaining perfect composure. This was not their first encounter with hostile forces, and it would not be their last. "Status report," Chen requested, her voice carrying easily across the bridge without seeming raised. Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez, her tactical officer, consulted his displays. 17 Scarix vessels showing significant systems damage, but no hull breaches or casualties. Their weapons are offline, but life support remains stable. The remaining ships are maintaining formation but showing signs of panic. Several are requesting orders from their flagship, communications. "Multiple channels are active," reported Ensign Park from the communications station. "They're arguing among themselves about whether to retreat or continue the engagement. Their war prime appears to be struggling with the concept that his prey turned out to be a predator." Chen allowed herself a small smile. The Scarix Empire had been expanding aggressively for decades, conquering younger civilizations through superior technology and tactics. What they didn't know was that humanity had been observing their methods for years, studying their weaknesses, and preparing for exactly this type of encounter. The truth was that humans were not the primitive species most of the galaxy believed them to be. While other civilizations had focused on conquering territory and subjugating weaker peoples, humanity had taken a different approach. They had studied, learned, and innovated. Human scientists had made breakthroughs in physics that other species considered impossible. Human engineers had built ships that redefined what space travel could accomplish. And human military strategists had developed tactics that turned conventional warfare on its head. The retribution itself was proof of human ingenuity. Its holographic camouflage system could make it appear as any type of vessel, from a damaged cargo hauler to a luxury liner. Its quantum engines allowed for instantaneous acceleration and movement patterns that seemed to violate the laws of physics. And its weapons systems were capable of precision strikes that could disable enemy vessels without harming their crews. "Open a channel to the Scarix flagship," Chen ordered. "Let's see if their war prime is ready for a civilized conversation." The view screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of the alien vessel. War Prime Vector stood at the center, his 4 yellow eyes burning with a mixture of rage and fear. His scaled hide showed stress patterns that Chen recognized from her. Xenobiological briefings, the Scarix equivalent of being backed into a corner. "Human," Vector snarled, his universal translator giving his words a guttural, threatening tone. "What are you? Your ship? Your capabilities? This is impossible." Chen tilted her head slightly, studying the alien commander with genuine curiosity. "What I am is someone who has been watching your empire's expansion for quite some time, War Prime Vector. Your tactics are impressive against civilizations with technology similar to your own. Unfortunately, you've just encountered a species that plays by different rules." "Different rules?" Vector's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation that Chen had learned to recognize. "You cannot stand against the might of the Scarix Empire. We control 17 star systems. We have fleets that number in the thousands." "Yes, I know," Chen replied calmly. We've been monitoring your communications for months. Very thorough record keeping, by the way. Your conquest of the Deltari Republic was particularly well documented, as was your enslavement of the Chthon colony worlds. The alien commander's eyes widened. The Deltari conquest had been classified at the highest levels of the Scarix military. How could the humans possibly know about it? Chen continued, her voice taking on a harder edge. What you don't seem to understand, what Prime, is that while you've been busy conquering primitive civilizations, humanity has been busy evolving. We've spent the last century not building empires, but building capabilities. And now you're experiencing the results of that choice. To demonstrate her point, Chen nodded to her tactical officer. Rodriguez input a series of commands, and suddenly the Retribution's sensors revealed something that sent waves of terror through the Scarix fleet. The human ship wasn't alone, scattered throughout the asteroid field, previously hidden by advanced stealth technology, were 12 more human vessels. They appeared on sensors like ghosts materializing from the void, each one as advanced and deadly as the Retribution itself. The Scarix fleet, which had thought it was hunting a single damaged cargo ship, was now surrounded by a superior force that had been watching their every move. Impossible, Vector whispered, his confident demeanor crumbling completely. Our sensors would have detected them. Our intelligence said humans barely had interstellar flight capability. Your intelligence was intentionally fed misinformation. Chen explained with the patience of a teacher correcting a slow student. We've found that most aggressive species are more likely to reveal their true capabilities when they believe they're attacking defenseless prey. It's amazing what you can learn about someone when they think they're winning. The tactical display on the Scarix flagship now showed the true situation. 13 human warships, each one carrying technology that made their best weapons look like stone knives, had completely surrounded the Crimson Tide fleet. Every escape route was blocked, every tactical advantage neutralized. The hunters had become the hunted, and they hadn't even realized it was happening. War Prime Vector's breathing became labored as the full scope of the trap became clear. His officers looked to him for orders, but what orders could he give? How? Do you fight an enemy that can make your weapons useless without firing a shot? How do you escape from ships that can move faster than your sensors can track? What do you want? Vector asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Chen leaned forward, slightly, her expression becoming more serious. What I want, War Prime, is for you to understand something very important. Humanity has been aware of the Scarix Empire's expansion for years. We know about your conquest methods, your weapons capabilities, and your plans for future territorial acquisition. What we've been waiting for is direct contact with your forces so we could deliver a message. What message? That the galaxy is not as empty of advanced civilizations as you believed. Humanity has been watching, learning, and preparing, and we are not alone. There are other species out there, species that have been quietly developing, capabilities that would surprise you. The age of easy conquests is ending, War Prime. The question is whether the Scarix Empire will adapt to this new reality, or continue making the same mistakes. Vector's tail lashed with frustrated rage. Everything he had believed about human capabilities, about the galactic balance of power, had been wrong. Catastrophically wrong. You're threatening my empire, he growled. No, Chen corrected firmly. I'm offering your empire a choice. You can continue your aggressive expansion, in which case you'll discover that there are several species in this galaxy with capabilities far beyond what you've encountered so far. Or you can choose to become part of a galactic community based on cooperation rather than conquest. The Scarix commander stared at the human captain, his predatory instincts warring with the growing realization that his species might not be the apex predators they had believed themselves to be. And if we refuse? Chun's expression hardened, and for a moment Vector caught a glimpse of the steel beneath her calm exterior. Then you'll discover exactly why humanity has spent the last century building weapons instead of empires. We don't conquer civilizations, war prime. We simply remove threats to galactic peace. The bridge of the Scarix flagship fell silent. Every officer present understood the implications of what they were hearing. The humans weren't just more advanced than expected, they were part of a network of advanced species that had been quietly preparing for exactly this type of encounter. Finally, Vector spoke, his voice hollow with defeat. "What are your terms?" "Simple," Chen replied. "Your fleet returns to Scarix space immediately. You report to your high command that humanity is not a suitable target for conquest, and you inform them that any future aggressive actions against human territory or our allies will result in a response they are not prepared to handle, and our damaged ships will be repaired by our engineering teams and escorted to the edge of our territory. Consider it a gesture of goodwill between species that no longer need to be enemies." Vector looked around his bridge at officers who had never experienced defeat, at instruments that had failed to detect the most important threat they had ever faced, at displays showing alien technology that rendered their most advanced weapons obsolete. The proud Crimson Tide fleet, terror of 17 star systems, had been neutered by a species they had dismissed as primitive. "Very well," he said finally, his voice carrying the bitter taste of total defeat. "We will withdraw." Chen nodded respectfully. "A wise choice, Warprim, and who knows? Perhaps someday our species will meet again under better circumstances. The galaxy is large enough for cooperation instead of conquest." The communication link closed, leaving Vector alone with his shattered assumptions and his crew's questioning stares. As the human vessels began powering up their repair systems to fix the damaged Scarix ships, he realized that everything the Empire thought it knew about the galactic balance of power had just changed forever. Hours later, as the Crimson Tide fleet limped back towards Scarix space, Warprime Vector composed the most difficult report of his career. He had to inform the High Command that humanity was not the primitive species their intelligence had suggested. He had to explain how warships had been defeated by 13 human vessels without a single shot being fired in anger. And he had to recommend that the Scarix Empire reconsider its entire approach to galactic expansion. But most importantly, he had to warn them that the age of easy conquests was over. Humanity had taught the Scarix a lesson they would never forget. In a galaxy full of predators, there is always something higher on the food chain. The encounter that was supposed to be a simple hunting expedition had become a humbling reminder that even apex predators can become prey when they encounter something truly superior. And for the first time in centuries, the Scarix Empire would have to consider the possibility that they were not alone at the top of the galactic hierarchy. As the human ships disappeared back into the asteroid field, resuming their hidden watch over the border regions, Captain Chen allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. One more aggressive species had learned that humanity was not defenseless prey. One more potential conflict had been resolved without unnecessary bloodshed. The galaxy was slowly learning that humans preferred cooperation to conquest, but were perfectly capable of defending themselves when threatened. And that lesson, delivered with precision and restraint, would ripple across space for generations to come.